Welcome back to Wall Street Week. We're talking with Mario Gabelli and Liz Ann Sonders, and I'd like to bring in Vine Street Trading head analyst Ira Harris. Liz Ann, in some 6 months, we're going to know who the next president is. What's at stake for the markets?
So I'm not sure anything quite yet. There's a perception that it has led to volatility, and I think in general it has. But I looked at some recent data that looked at U.S. stock market correlations to poll numbers for all of the current candidates and to primary results of all the candidates. And there doesn't seem to be any pattern. So I think it's been a peripheral contributor to volatility. But when we actually have two candidates competing head-to-head that are putting more formal policy proposals, then I think it becomes a bigger needle mover for the market. But at this point, I think it's more a distraction than it is an effect.
Ira, who does the markets want to be the next president, or do they care?
Probably nobody. Nobody who we're looking at. No, right now it's all the Fed. And so as the Fed is keeping everything afloat on that sea of liquidity, they don't care. I think probably from a who do we know that Hillary probably bears, that they feel more comfortable with that. But I don't think the markets are enamored with any of the people who are here.
So it's really about the Fed.
Yeah, now you do have a referendum in the UK on June 23rd that will be kind of an element of the uncertainty in the market beforehand. But
okay, so that referendum is basically the Great Britain is thinking about exiting the European Economic Union.
Well, that would be an element that one is going to focus on 6 weeks from now a lot more intensely than the election. But in that, my model, the notion of regulation and taxes. Will we reform taxes and make the U.S. competitive again within the framework of competing on a global basis? And what impact will that have on the earnings? And will the House and Ways Committee be able to do a major change? And will that take effect in 2017?
So, Larry, who has a better chance of doing that, a Republican president or a Democratic president?
I think both are going to do it. And it depends. I mean, you know, if Biden and Warren are the candidates on the Democratic side, I'm not as convinced. On the other side of the coin, I would...
So that was a wild card you just threw in there. Biden and Warren.
Right. So, you know, if it's more conventional thinking, which is either...
Is the market prepared for that sort of wild card?
My own reaction is simple. In the last 110 years in the United States, the market has gone from like 60 on the Dow to 17,000. And essentially, we've had some very good presidents, we've had some bad. I think the American system of allocating capital will prevail no matter who's president. Will flourish under some with a different attitude towards entrepreneurialism, capitalism, and the free market system.
Liz Ann, some of the corporations are nervous about the RNC convention. There's reports that they're pulling out their sponsorships and things like that. Should we be worried about that from a business/political relationship?
Maybe in the short term in terms of volatility. We have had contested conventions in the past. We shouldn't really be calling them brokered conventions because of what that used to entail. We've gotten through it before. I'm a big believer in what Mario said, that I think a lot of this is just the near-term circus. Ultimately, I think capitalism and capital allocation and the spirit of the U.S. is going to win over any of the near-term circus.
But there is an element of confusion among the consumer because of the extraordinary amount of focus on this election through the media. And they could be hesitating in terms of spending, and that's an element.
What is the confusion?
Many voices. Many different issues. It's a lot more focused.
So you think once we get to two candidates, it will have a boost in terms of consumer confidence, consumer spending?
It should eliminate some of the histrionics that are currently prevailing.
Ira, you agree with that?
I think that's absolutely right. But I think what it shows is how these candidates have tapped into the anger that exists out there. And
right.
What's the anger? And I think that in that regard, Janet Yellen has it right. The middle class has really been put upon by globalization. I mean, we're sitting in this room, we've been able to take, but they have for 30 years had their wages crushed on a relative basis. And I think that's what the issue is here. And it's going to be, how does this play out? And they understand this very well. Can they fix it? Not by anything that we've heard, but I think that at least that voice is being heard, and it wasn't heard. And I think that's why this election is probably a positive for that reason.
Is it fixable, though, Ira?
Well, is it fixable, or can you ameliorate some of the pain? I think, which is some the issues. Yeah, they've talked about these things before. Look, Mario and I were talking about this beforehand, that private sector unions have really borne the brunt of globalization. Not public sector unions. That's a whole different story and a whole different argument. But going forward, I think that they've heard this loud and clear.
Mario, in Donald Trump's financial disclosure, he said that he invests with friends, people he respects, and it's public knowledge that he has invested in one of your funds. Now, I realize you don't want to talk about Trump, but what is the fund that Donald Trump is invested in that GAMCO runs?
We don't talk about any of our clients. We have many of them.
Right.
But to the degree that the press reported that he had invested in a options writing program in the global fund that does gold and natural resources, that's the one he invested in.
Okay, so
I can't tell whether he picked it himself or an intermediary picked it.
Good point, but the objective of that fund, just for viewers, the objective of that fund would be to participate if the commodity prices went up.
They do option writing is to generate current returns by capturing the volatility in the underlying stock, and they have a team that runs that led by Vincent Roach.
All right, well, he respects you when he calls you a friend, because he said he invests with friends, and he said he invests with people he respects.
You want to be Secretary of Treasury, Mario?
You know, as Tecumseh Sherman said, if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. You know,
we're going to keep you on the record on that.
I hope so. Yeah. We have a full-time opportunity to take care of our clients. We have that is the most important job in terms of judgment and service, and we have a great passion for our country, and we would serve, but we're serving by paying a lot of taxes. Well,